Earlier this year, I decided to play through the entire Dragon Quest series from the beginning, and although Dragon Quest 1 was a very rough experience for me, I couldn't help but look forward to Dragon Quest 2, especially knowing how franchises improve over time. And oh my god, was I ever glad to do so. The leap from 1 to 2 is insane, even from the moment you open the game. It's still an NES-era RPG, but for a sequel that came out only 5 months after the first, this was a leap worthy of discussion. Even the title screen is a massive step up, showing the three heroes slowly journey through a cave, illuminating the title and the cave as they go. Although, for full disclosure, this was not the case in the Japanese version, which used a title screen more comparable to that of the original game. Getting this little glow up out of the way, we should start a new quest, name our character, and begin. The game starts with a summary of the first game, how the descendant of Erdrick defeated the Dragon Lord and brought peace to the land. For a century, peace has remained to the world and Erdrick's line now rules a large part of that world. But all of that is about to change. The king and princess of Moonbrook were enjoying a peaceful stroll when suddenly lightning strikes. The world becomes ominous and the wizard Hargon be sent sending his minions after the castle. Before the king can escape, a monster teleports into the castle and obliterates one of the soldiers with a magic spell. The king attempted to hide his daughter away so she could journey to the neighboring kingdom and warn his cousin, but was too late. More monsters kept appearing. Although he fought hard, the king was unfortunately no match for the combined strengths of these beasts. The castle quickly gets overrun by soldiers try their best to fend off the attack, but are nonetheless defeated. One lone knight manages to escape, slowly limping his way to safety as the castle of Moonbrook burns to the ground. He eventually reaches Maidenhall, where he collapses at the gate. The guards of Maidenhall help him to his feet and he demands to see the king, to warn him of this dangerous threat. And it is here that our game finally begins. I love this intro. It's such a massive contrast in quality from the first game's opening, and everything about it, from the music, to the tiles changing color, to the smaller details like showing the wounded soldiers stagger every step before moving on, help elevate the presentation of this scene and really set the mood. The game from here becomes similar to that of the first game. The king, our father this time, cannot make the journey due to his age, and instead sends us in his stead. He gives us a chest containing some gold and a sword, and now we begin our quest. As with the last game, we begin in Castletown and we can gather some intel. There's nothing too crazy here, except we also have this cute little dog walking around, and astonishingly, we have a teleportal that upon entering will warp us to an island off in the distance with no other apparent purpose. It is really nice though, and establishes the scale of our journey, showing lands that we cannot reach yet, but we can see. Unlike the first game, where everything took place within a fairly small landmass. We need to head west, so buy yourself a healing herb or two and head out and start grinding. Gain a few levels and remember to save before moving on, because your character can't learn magic. Unlike the first game, where the hero is exclusively a jack of all trades, the Prince of Maidenhall is a warrior class, and he focuses on just beating things senselessly rather than using any sort of magical ability. That is reserved for the other party members that we can get later. Once you are properly leveled, gather a few more herbs and head west. Grinding in this game feels a bit less annoying than in the first due to the enemy variety even this early in, but needing to fight 3 enemies at once and determining which one to attack compared to the first, which had 1 enemy at a time, is also far more engaging, and only gets better as time goes on. We eventually find our way to Leftwine, where we can see a weapons shop with wares far beyond our current price point. So for now, just buy some more healing herbs and antidote herbs, maybe take a leather shield if you have some money for it, and then make your way north to Cannock. At Cannock, we can find out that the prince is already set out on his journey, and that we just missed him. Tragic as this news might be, he is trained in the magical arts and is going close by to the Spring of Bravery, so we should be able to catch up. Up in this direction, we meet the next 2 enemies that can spice up the combat of this game. enemies that can poison you, and enemies that can heal other enemies. Once again, this is nothing too crazy and is normal in many RPGs, but compared to the first game, this is pretty cool. Entering the cave itself, we see we don't really need a torch this time, and the cave graphically looks very neat as well. We have a few treasure chests sitting around here, but our main goal was to find the pond here in the middle, where we unfortunately missed the Prince of Cannock once again. But he's on his way to Midenhall, presumably to find us. So of course, we journey all the way to Midenhall just to find out that, once again, we just missed him. So we immediately sprint back to Leftwine where we can finally catch up with him. For me, his name is Orfeo, but his name is actually different every time you play. Orfeo must be very skilled or very sneaky, as he's just level 1 with nothing but a club and some leather armor, so we should go grind him up for a few levels to get him equipped. He's going to be our mage character for right now, knowing heal and fireball, once he gets properly leveled. Once we get him leveled, we should head west until we find this cave. Over here, a few more dangerous enemies start showing up like wizards, but luckily I think I'm over leveled, because they didn't deal much damage at all outside their fireball spell. Once inside the cave itself though, we start getting more dangerous enemy combinations, like army ants that can call for reinforcements, the big cobras that can poison you, magic ants that can put you to sleep. Now while I was lucky enough to never be poisoned or trapped in a sleep stun, I can definitely see that happening. So just be careful and make your way through the cave, picking up all the treasure you can see, and you'll find the silver key at the very end. The silver key doesn't do much for us immediately, but going back down the path of previous towns, and while I found some hints and lottery, there wasn't anything else worthwhile, so I moved on. Heading south past this pillar, taking an underground passage that pops you out on the other end, or on this tiny island if you go the wrong way like I did. We make our way to the town of Moonbrook, stopping in the town of Hamlin beforehand. Hamlin will be our base of operations for quite a while, and when you arrive, you might immediately notice something strange. One of the NPCs here tells you to speak to everyone, because not everything is what it seems. Now, wouldn't you know it, up in the corner we actually have a save area by talking to this guy. It immediately shook me as odd that this random guy is apparently able to record your progress, but even more odd was this dog that starts to follow you around like a party member if you talk to it. I thought it was just a nice little detail, until I remembered that the other dogs don't do that. So something is special about this dog. From here, load up and give both the princes some magic gear and cross the bridge to the south. And then we can head to Moonbrook. Enemies are once again starting to get more intense, and the game starts to resemble more of an actual RPG finally. Groups of 4 or more enemies are now common, and sometimes these combinations can be rough, because you'll have enemies that can debuff you or heal their allies on the same team as enemies that are dangerous enough on their own, so it really starts to make you think twice since we still only have 2 party members. Once you cross the poison swamp into Moonbrook, you see it is left in ruins from the attack at the beginning of the game, and it even has been looted clean as all the chests are empty. At first, I thought these moving flames were a trap of some kind, but they're actually spirits, and talking to the spirit of the king, he'll inform me that his daughter was cursed and turned into a dog. Almost like the weird dog that we met back in Hamlin. We also hear about how the Mirror of Ra can cure her, although unfortunately, the soldier that tells us this is inside of a poison swamp, so he'll likely die in 30 seconds if Dark Souls taught me anything. The Mirror of Ra was lost in a swamp southeast of Hamlin next to some bridges, so while we go in that direction, we should take a look and see what we find. The only other thing here is a spirit that I'm assuming is reliving the attack on the castle for all eternity, which would be pretty messed up if true. With our recon on the castle done, we can find that swamp, which is a poison swamp by the way, and recover the Mirror of Ra from within, allowing us to now lift the curse on the Princess of Moonbrook, who for me was named Alani. Just like with the Prince of Cannock, their names are generated randomly by the game. She's another mage character, but unlike Orfeo, she can't use much weaponry or gear at all, and she also starts at level 1 again. However, her pure magical ability far than makes up for it, especially with what she learns very soon. The whole team is now together. The Scions of Erdrick, the luminaries of the legendary line, the Big Three, Mothman, Orfeo, and Ilani. And it's time to finally set out and put an end to Hargon. After this, I admittedly got horribly lost and ended up wandering around in circles before discovering this tower behind the mountain mass, with me having no idea how to get to it. I eventually discovered I had to actually physically walk all the way to the end of the mountain mass, cross this bridge, and then follow the coast back, which, yeah, I get it makes sense in retrospect. It's not like I can really go anywhere else since these two land masses are kind of surrounded by water otherwise, so I would have found it eventually. But, whatever, we eventually make it to the tower and get lost inside and hit some really bad RNG, so a group of baboons ripped my spine out, and I went to go grind a bit before coming back with more healing items to try again. Ilani lacking any real magic weapons or armor means that despite all of her magic, she's still very squishy, so keep an eye on her during this. The tower itself is a maze, similar to how the Dragon Lord's castle was in the first game, with multiple staircases on each floor, some of which will take you to dead ends, some go to rooms with other staircases, some go to rooms with only one staircase, and you get the point, you gotta find your way through. During all of this, you also need to be careful to stay away from the edge. If you fall down, you will take damage, and it's not pretty. After finding a Cloak of Wind, hand it to a party member that has room for it, because you'll need to save it for a minute or two. Moving to the west of Moonbrook and then right through the shrine, we pop out on the other side of the river on a new landmass to explore. And then heading northwest from here, we can find the Dragon's Horns, 2 towers on an opposite side of the water. Climb to the top of the first tower, have somebody equip the Cloak of Wind, and then jump off to the north. From here, we can glide all the way to the other side, and then head north again to reach the town of Leonport. At first, Leonport doesn't seem that strange. I mean, they don't like strangers that much, but otherwise it's pretty standard until we reach the top left corner of the map and witness a girl being attacked by gremlins. They aren't that strong, so just beat them upside the head and she'll take you to her guardian who gives you this boat for free. I actually really enjoy getting a free boat, and it's also a nice little detail to have the corner of the map where the gremlins were have a poison puddle start forming. It really nails home the idea that if we didn't get here sooner, this town would have been another Moonbrook. Getting on the boat and taking sail, I immediately got lost and drifted around aimlessly until I wound up at a familiar looking shape. I kept circling around until I found 2 castles, one to the south, surrounded by a poison swamp, and one just like the first game's town. So I docked my ship and walked into the northern town, just to find that it actually was Tantagel from the first game, much to my surprise. It's a little bit different, but it's still here, even after 100 years. Even the free magic replenishment guy is here. I'm glad he made it. There's nothing too much for me here at the moment though, just finding out that the king is a wuss and locked himself in his room to try and avoid Hargon. But this merchant provided far better advice. Namely, the location of the sunken treasure that the pirate told us about. So, I set sail, back to the far north, and right next to this whirlpool thing, I can collect the treasure and trade it back to the pirate for the Echo Flute. It apparently does nothing right now, but we all know it will become important later. Traveling back to Tantagel, I'd also decided to stop by our old friend the Dragon Lord's castle, and it also gets a slight redesign. We can actually travel all the way through until we meet his grandson. You know, I never imagined the Dragon Lord was the type to have a relationship, but I mean, hey, here's living proof of it. He offers to help us and give us advice because he believes that as a living heir to the Dragon Lord's domain, everything that Hargon is trying to conquer is technically his. And I mean, hey, I'll take that as an excuse. We have our goal. We need to collect the 5 magic MacGuffins and present them to Rubus. Sounds like a plan to me. After this, though, I kinda just got lost. Some areas are way too dangerous for me right now, and others had locked doors that I couldn't progress through. I did, however, accidentally find the town of Zahan, which is also, coincidentally, the town from the beginning of the game when you leave that teleportal. All of the men are away, so it's just old people, women, and kids with not much else to do here. I did get a few hints as to what to do, but nothing I can actually do right now, except for this dog, who led me to a gold key. Taking the gold key, I took the nearby portal back to Midenhall at the beginning of the game and used it to unlock this second door, where we can now find the token of Erdrick. So I warped back to Tantago, where I can find the king admitting that he's just a useless crybaby, but also a seamstress, letting us know that if we enter the Northern Dragon's Horn, we can find an item that she can use to make an outfit. So we head on our way. But not before I first decided to check out the locked door of the Dragon Lord's castle, and along the way I grabbed that chest from earlier. Inside that chest we have the Sword of Erdrick, which only the player character can wield, but nothing really fancy inside the gold door, and it's not worth the risk. While in the continent, I also decided to revisit that shrine from the first game and trade the token for the helmet of Erdrick, and decided to peep this teleportal on the other side, which sent me to a room with 2 other portals and an exit. I went through every portal and the portals that they have on their ends, and all I can really assume is that this is some kind of fast travel hub area to make traveling the world even faster than your ship, since they had portals basically everywhere. From here, our only real job is to use a combination of the portals and our ship to travel everywhere we can and collect these crests. Blowing the flute will create an echo in some locations, and that's how we can tell where the crests are, but they're still invisible and you have to actually search for them. And I didn't meet the NPC giving me this hint until I already had collected a few, so it's kind of pointless knowledge. Trying to find these crests, I made my way to the town of Welgarth, which is entirely underground. This one shopkeeper has a secret item on their menu that when selected will let you purchase the jailer's key necessary to open all the jailhouse doors. And opening the jailhouse door will let us find the escaped prisoner just hiding one panel off screen, and he'll proceed to give us the wire gate key for some reason. Maybe he's afraid of us and thinks we're guards or something, I'm not really sure. With every key I collected, I ventured back to every previously explored town, and starting with Midenhall, I found an evil clown. I don't think it looks much like a clown, but alright, sure, an evil clown. Beating him gave me the Staff of Thunder, which given that's a weapon that Ilani can actually use, I'm passing it over to her. From here, I went back and forth between sailing and teleporting, and I made my way back to Hamlin, where inside I can finally unlock this gold door and access this little bonus area with an old man giving me a hint, and then these 2 monsters behind the bars. Killing them didn't drop anything, but it did kill Ilani, so I left to get her revived, only to later on go back and realize that the water crest was there. So I went back in and grabbed it. Kind of just a time waster, but we dealt with it. Back in the teleport hub, the fire shrine, so called I'm guessing because of the giant flame in the middle, has the sun crest in this top corner. Don't ask me how you're supposed to know it's there. After collecting it, I once again set sail. I found this landmass surrounded by rough water, and couldn't really get through except for this one narrow stream. This town has a teleporter not too far from Midenhall, which I also took advantage of because it's a long journey and there are no save areas within that town. And the teleport from Midenhall is also directly behind the weapon shop here, so there's nothing stopping you from breaking in and taking the armor of Gaia by doing this. Going back to actually meet the king of this town, he makes us fight the Saber Lion in exchange for a moon crest, but nothing else is here. All the hints are for things I've already learned, and then there's a fortune teller, which I guess while useful is also very vague. After this, I fast traveled back to Liamport and got another ship. The ship apparently respawns every time you enter Liamport, I'm presuming to keep you from getting landlocked, and we head to the south where we can enter our next dungeon. The enemies here, on their own, are not too difficult, but together is a different story. The Gorgons, while not having much health, have ridiculously high defense, and are masterful spellcrafters. They can cast Surround, which lowers your accuracy, Increase, which buffs their defense, Defense, which lowers your defense, and Sleep, which, puts you to sleep. Due to this, the only person on my team who was really able to deal consistent damage with them was the player character, Orfeo was being mainly used to block their spells, and Alani was mainly focused on putting them to sleep or lowering their defense. We also have the Undead, who deal a lot of damage per hit, and the Dragonfly, which can breathe fire, hitting the entire party and more. On their own, these might be easily surmountable, but together, they can pose a serious threat. I ended up having my entire party get wiped due to tough random encounters more than I would like. I recommend equipping everyone with the Dragon's Bane item. It may take up an inventory space, but it does make you more resistant to spells, so you won't get sleeped and such as often. Journey through the lighthouse, making sure not to get lost as you can only see the section you're in, and fight off what you can until eventually you find this gremlin just chilling on this floor. When you walk past, he'll run inside the next room, and if you go to follow him, there'll be an old man in his place. Very suspiciously, the old man does not mention the gremlin at all and just says he knows what we're looking for and offers to guide us. When we do eventually reach the chest, opening it will trigger a trap, summoning more gremlins that we'll need to fight off. Gremlins are fairly annoying, but if you went into this battle with all 3 party members alive and at full health, you can very easily beat them and collect the Star Crest. From here, I wandered around a bit more until I made my way to the town of Baron, which we can do by either teleporting or sailing. There's nothing too specific here. Some NPCs are giving me hints for crests I've already obtained, which means I'm probably doing things out of order again, but otherwise, the only big thing here is this teleporter locked behind a locked door, which I'm not doing because there's a bunch of damage tiles in between it. I will make a note of it though. I also found out that the leaf of the world tree is a revival item, which is great because I've just kind of been carrying it around wondering what I'm supposed to do with it. There is a sword here I can buy called the Dragon Killer, which is also stronger than Erdrick's sword for some reason. And also Erdrick's sword, the sword used by the legendary hero Erdrick and later on his descendant, is only worth 2 gold. I feel as if I'm nearing the end of the game, so I'll keep it for now in case someone dies midway through. I don't wish to go all the way back through this. But once done here, I head on my ship and head back north. Heading north from Baron, we can reach this landmass with 2 rivers, and by docking at this one, we can proceed past the mountains, which I highly recommend bringing healing items for. The enemies here can and will sap your magic, and as you probably guess, you don't want to be left with 0 MP and a character on the verge of death. Proceeding through, we can eventually reach the town of Tun, where we can find some more information about the stuff we've already done. But most importantly, we can find out that the Moon Shard is in the Tower of the Moon to the south, although it's currently inaccessible due to the sluice gate being closed. Well, I already have the key, so let's just go ahead and open it. Clearing up the second path to the town, and the tower to the south. We also meet Don Mahone, who agrees to make us the water flying cloth in exchange for the materials, and the loom, which was stolen by a guy that smelled like fish. Well, also, lucky for us, we already know of a town of fishermen, and the men aren't there right now, meaning that loom is ripe for the taking. So we visit the town of Zahan once again, and if Orfeo is strong enough to cast Step Guard, then we can safely cross these damage tiles and obtain the magic loom. And by giving it and the Dews yarn to Don Mahone, he can craft us the water flying cloth. Although it does take us 1 day, so save the game and come back later to obtain it before heading out to the Tower of the Moon. The Tower of the Moon was another dungeon, although for me personally, I was mainly able to just walk right through. I did get to the end and gather the Moon Shard and talk to an old man about a hint for its true purpose. And that's where the real purpose of this journey begins. Taking the Moon Shard to this little island with rough water around it, we can use the Moon Shard to change the water level and allow us to enter. This dungeon is noticeably worse than the others because its main gimmick is lava floors. Step Guard does not work against lava, meaning that you just need to tank the hits. This isn't too bad if you know what direction to go, but if you are lost, this can cause a lot of problems. And the biggest issue within this dungeon is actually the puppet men. Just like their weaker counterparts, they can do a dance to sap your magic. Except since you're in a dungeon, you can't just warp wing to escape after the battle is over. If these guys appear in battle, take them out as quickly as you can, because otherwise they will ruin your life. If your magic gets too low, cast outside and then either return or use a warp ring to return to a west area and try again. I unfortunately did not make it, and on the last floor I ended up running out of magic, so I had to redo the entire dungeon. I had no way of escaping and had to reset my game. Make it to the end with some MP left, and 2 wizards will confront you before transforming into 2 evil clowns. Again, they do not look like clowns. Just bonk them in the head really hard, grab the Eye of Malroth, and escape. Return to the town of Baron. For me, the teleporter north of town was the fastest. And cross these damage tiles, and we'll enter the House of Healing to be warped to this little area, where, as this man will confirm, is the road to Rhone. While it's currently blocked off, using the Eye of Malroth will clear that up, opening a passage between the mountains and allowing us inside. In this cave, we can gather the Life Crest, and after gathering it, immediately leave. Beyond that cave lies the final area of the game, but we still have one more thing to do in the overworld. Our final task is to receive the Blessing of Rubus, so we head to the respective shrine, all crests in hand, and offer them up to her. She informs us that she promised Erdrick to lend us her strength when the time is right, and that actually sparks some interest. Erdrick is no longer some mortal hero. He is someone that even the divine will speak fondly of. She lends us her charm and sends us on the way, now able to proceed into the final part of the world. The Cave to Rhone is a significant difficulty spike compared to the surrounding areas, and it's a good sign that you're nearing the end. The game was pretty good at balancing its difficulty up till now, so the massive spike in difficulty, with some encounters being able to kill the hero on one turn even if he was parrying, is insane to me. Please spend a few hours grinding before progressing, because you will need it. The entire dungeon is a maze of pitfalls and confusing pathways. Taking one path through the dungeon will allow us to find the armor of Erdrick, so I threw away the armor of Gaia and placed it on. A completely separate pathway will lead to the Thunder Sword, which is significantly stronger than the Sword of Erdrick or the Dragon Killer. But after finally navigating our way out of this abomination, we arrive in Rhone, the final region of the game.
It's snow. Like we climbed to the top of Mount Everest. No other location in the game has snow like this, which tells us we must be very high up. Either that or Hargon's magic is making this area inhospitable. Journeying through this, I was lucky enough to only have one random encounter on my way here, and I was able to run from it. I was fairly low on MP and I used 2 of my healing items, and I really wanted to keep some of these for later. This one shrine, resting on a small island, accessible via some bridges, was my sole respite here. Inside, we can find an old man who can heal us, restore our magic, and save the game, as well as a one-way teleporter back to the rest of the world, or as this one woman calls it, the underworld. I'm not exactly sure why they call it that. Either way, every enemy here is tough. Far, far tougher than anything we fought so far. Not only does everything here hit hard, but some of them even have instant kill skills. And when they spawn in groups, we don't want to deal with this. Spend as much time grinding as you need, and try not to go insane until you are strong enough to progress. If you level high enough, Orfeo can learn Defeat and Alani can learn Explode It, which both deal very useful damage, depending on which enemy you're fighting. You will need to grind a lot. This is unavoidable, and it has caused me psychic damage every time I tried. But you can, and will, be able to make it if you just keep pushing. I want to say it's doable if the main hero is around level 30, but you could technically grind even higher if you want to. I had almost made it at level 27, but I was still just barely too short. But we finally arrive at the Hall of Hargon. And we can see that surprisingly looks exactly like Maidenhall. In fact, it is Maidenhall. Even the king is here. There's an inn, the shop, the dog, the teleportal, it's all here. But we need to remember, Hargon is a sorcerer, and by using the charm that Rubus gave us, we can dispel this illusion and reveal the truth. I actually like how in-depth the illusion goes. The inn doesn't actually heal you once you dispel the illusion or leave. Everything here is fake. If you actually revive your party and then leave, you'll see that they're still dead. These wandering flames even act as a part of NPCs, and these two monsters will call us fools for not just accepting the false reality that was presented to us. But we can beat them down and press on. Unlock this secret door and then pass through to a bunch of damage tiles, which we'll have to then pass through another locked door and then some more damage tiles, until we arrive at this center here, where we can use the Eye of Hargon once again to enter the dungeon proper. The dungeon itself is surprisingly the most simple dungeon in the game, in all honesty. The enemies here can still hit hard, but they're weaker than the enemies outside, and even if you do manage to get one of the enemies outside, they don't have any sort of modified stats. They're just exactly as strong as their outside counterparts. The biggest threats that we'll have to deal with here are the 3 mini-bosses found within. The first one, Atlas, is a strength powerhouse. He can, and likely will, deal a lot of damage to one character per turn. But if you keep hitting him with the hero and maybe use some buffs and debuffs, he will go down. The second one, Bazuzu, is a stronger variant of the baboons that we've fought so far. However, he is weak to sleep, so even if it's only for a turn or two, put him to sleep and just let the 2 princes deal damage. The third and final mini-boss, however, is easily the worst of the bunch. This is Zarlox, and even though he still uses the same strategy as his weaker counterparts, you need to be aware that he will deal far more damage, and he can heal himself. If you need help, he is weak to surround, so you can lower his accuracy a bit, and you can still put him to sleep despite the fact that he's resistant to it. And if you truly desperately need to, you can hit him with the instant kill skill, but that chance is so significantly slim it's not worth the magic in my opinion unless it's a last-ditch effort. Finally, we arrived at the throne of the big man himself, Hargon, who is not too pleased with our appearance here. Personally though, I don't care. He put us through pain and torture to reach this point, so whatever, just beat him in the face. Hargon is a sorcerer, so, you could try to stop his spells, just know that he's partially resistant to doing so. Health-wise, he's not too bad compared to the rest of the enemies and bosses by this point, so don't be afraid to let loose if you're confident that in this next turn you can have him handled. But upon his defeat, he will tell us that we haven't won yet, and that he's gonna make us meet God. Okay, those weren't his exact words, but I mean, trust me, after playing this next fight, you'll agree, you're gonna be meeting God. Heal yourself to full, right now. I'm being dead serious, heal yourself to full, this is important. The true final battle will begin shortly. Lightning strikes, and the castle begins to shake and crumble until Malroth appears. He is significantly stronger than Hargon was, and with one major difference. He is fully resistant to stop spell. While you might be able to stop Hargon from healing himself, you can't pull that off here. Malroth will heal himself, and he will constantly use powerful magic, as well as hit you and cause you to faint, inflicting the sleep status. He is also immune to sleep as well, making the only 2 debuffs that you can use effectively on him defense and surround. And even with surround, he still has some resistance to it. Do not let up on him. Hit him every time you get the chance. Decrease his defense, do whatever you can to keep busting his health down, because if he gets the chance to heal, he will do it. He has infinite MP. You cannot make him stop. You need to be able to deal some serious damage, and you need to be able to deal it as fast as you can. But eventually, You will beat him down. It might take a couple tries, I died my first few, but you will beat him down. And Rubus will speak to you once again, letting us know that peace has returned to the world. She heals us back to full health and sends us on our way. Hargon's castle is destroyed, as is the wizard himself and his archfiend. We can then return to Maidenhall, where the king awaits. We have proven ourselves and our bloodline, and it is time to take the throne. As new king of Maidenhall, we, with our cousins by our side, sit back and watch the credits roll. I actually really like that it still says Dragon Quest in the original section of the credits before switching to Dragon Warrior for the English section. Overall, I know I've said it before, but I really love this game compared to the first. It's such a massive leap in quality, and even if it's simple, the combat is difficult enough to keep you engaged. The high fantasy magic of the world is felt at every corner, from the villain being a wizard to the princess being cursed to become a dog. Hargon using visions of our home to deceive us is also a unique idea I don't see many in ES-era RPGs, or RPGs in general using. Even if resisting and fighting against a false reality is a common trope that I have seen done many times in fiction, I really wish more video games would have an evil sorcerer or god present you with a false reality that you have to actually fight back against. I think that would go cool. And you know, that entire section, while it might be an abomination and an affront to God, and it makes me want to meet Yuji Horii in a parking lot and steal his lunch money, the entire rest of the game genuinely comes together very well, and you can see some of the roots for the franchise start here. Now, I get it. It's been 2 months and this video is literally coming out like on the last days of the month, but I get it. Dragon Quest III is coming, guys. It's right around the corner, I promise. See you all in 2 months when a future version of me travels back to the past and hands me an already recorded video, because it's probably gonna be just as hard.